Bored with basic heat embossing? I've got 4 fun techniques to share with you today. Let's get crafting. If you've been card making for a while, you just might have a drawer full of colored embossing powders that haven't been used in eons. So today we're going to break those babies out, and I'm using this Stampers Anonymous Mixed Media Stamp and Stencil set, and I'm using the Happy Birthday Wishes to You stamp along with some Versamark. Now I've already lined my stamp up, and I'm using a piece of Recollections 65-pound weight cardstock that I purchased from Michael's, and I'm going to actually get 2 stamps on this. So I am using my Pink and Main anti-static powder brush. I do have the bag, and I absolutely hate it because I don't like the feeling of powder on my hands. So the brush works out perfectly. Not that the bag did a bad job, I just don't like the feeling of powder. So I've inked up my Versamark onto my stamp really well, and I'm giving it a good press. This is a solid stamp, however, it sort of has a distressed or aged look about it, so not everything gets filled in. I don't have a dedicated utensil to scoop up embossing powders, so I cut a piece of straw on an angle and it becomes my scoop. Now this first one is Peach Halo Tinsel by Stampendous, and I've just scooped up a little bit and I'm dropping it randomly across that stamped image. I don't want too much because this is mix and match. With the fold of my paper used to funnel my remaining embossing powder back into the pot, I'm on to my second color. This is a Michael's Recollections brand opaque sparkle embossing powder in the color Emerald. Once again, I'm just using a tiny smidgen of my embossing powder and randomly placing it over my stamped image. A quick tap off of my card, and I've added green. Now, I did shake that piece of paper off and brush it off as well to make sure I wasn't contaminating my colors, but you could certainly make a custom blend and put it into a separate container if you'd like. The final embossing powder I'm using is a Ranger Purple embossing powder, and this time I'm going to dump it over the entire image, so anything that has any sticky Versamark still exposed will grab onto that purple. I've heated my WOW heat embossing tool on number 2 for melting for about 10 seconds prior to heat embossing. It took a little longer to heat emboss everything, but it's cute. Now the second embossing technique is coloring with my embossing powders, and I'm using this Hero Art stamp. This is called Hero Florals Magnolia, and the same oh no, I take that back. That's not the same cardstock. This time I decided to use a heavy distress watercolor cardstock because I knew I was going to be doing a lot of heat embossing with this, and I thought it wouldn't warp as much as something thinner and lighter like Recollections cardstock. Now I'm inking up my stamp with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Please be sure to stick around to the end because I've made cards out of all of my different examples today. Now, I definitely learned something from this particular example. I learned that I probably should have started with a permanent ink like Ranger Archival ink. I think that would have done better for me in the long run, but it all still works out. I still used it. I don't ever throw anything away, even if I think that I messed it up, because, well, I invested time and supplies into it, so I may as well figure out a way to use it. I'm leaving my stamp in the exact same position, so I want to make sure that I write a little T for top so that I know exactly where my cardstock needs to go because I am going to restamp this at the end. Now, I wanted to color, so I need some VersaFine or Emboss It pens. These are a 2-pack from Ranger. This is Emboss It. It has sticky ink inside of it. The white barrel one has clear transparent ink, and the black barrel one has black sticky ink in it. Now the black pen is really good for, number 1, allowing you to see where you're coloring, and number 2, if you want a dark base. So I'm just outlining and filling in, not really worrying about where the ink was because we're going to fix that later, but I want a darker leaf and then a lighter leaf. So I'm just filling in this, this is real time. I'm just filling in my little leaf, and it's hard to believe that that's like VersaFine or Versamark ink, but it is. It's sticky. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that same emerald green glittery embossing powder from Michaels that I did earlier. And I'm not going to heat emboss it at the beginning because I want to try to get all of my leaves done at once, so I limit the amount of warpage that's going to happen to this cardstock as it gets a lot of heat. At this point, I'm coloring my third and final leaf with the black Emboss It pen, and as you can see, I have smudged the ink. Now, VersaFine is a pigment ink, meaning that it sits on top of the cardstock and has a longer wet time to allow you to heat emboss it. Well, I kind of got my fingers in it, not gonna lie. But it's okay because I'm ultimately going to fussy cut this out and it's not going to matter in the long run. With all of my leaves that I wanted to be dark and opaque complete, I've gone ahead and I am heat setting those. Now, just a reminder that card and paper does not have memory, so you can rebend it and reshape it until you get it flat as you can. Now, I'm moving on to using the clear embossing pen, and I'm using a Distress Embossing Glaze. This one's cracked pistachio, and the difference with this one is that it is not opaque, it's transparent. So I wanted a little variation in my leaves, and this is how I'm doing it. Now, it is much more difficult to see the embossing pen, but I'm seeing it because I'm actually smearing the VersaFine underneath. But I'm not real worried about it because we're going to deal with this later. To get the ink off of my VersaFine pen, I am just going to wipe it off onto a scrap piece of paper, and it's good as new. And I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. Once again, I have preheated my WOW embossing tool, and I am going to go ahead and melt that transparent embossing glaze. Now, the name is insignificant. There's lots of different names for embossing powders. This just happens to be Tim Holtz's name, embossing glaze. It's no different. It's still embossing powder. This one happens to be transparent. Now, another great idea is to lift your cardstock off of the table while you're passing heat through it. That way it heats the card up and melts that powder quicker. I apologize, I seem to have lost some of my footage, but I used the clear Emboss It pen and used Ranger's Seafoam White embossing powder on the entire magnolia. Tapped it off and heat emboss it. And after it's heat embossed, I wanted to get some of that definition back. Remember when I wrote the T for the top? I'm putting this back in my stamp positioner, and I'm off camera, I'm trying to manipulate it again to get it as flat as possible. But I'm going to go ahead and restamp this to put all of that detail back into the card. Here is where I absolutely should have used archival ink. Once again, I go ahead and use that VersaFine ink, and it took hours and it still wasn't dry. The archival ink would have been permanent and dry very quickly. So what I did to combat that is just covered the entire thing with clear embossing powder and embossed the entire image all over again. Now, I did have to restamp this, I think 3 or 4 times to get it to work. This one comes out dynamite. Can't wait to show you at the end. Now, this third technique is really aimed at the person who only has a few embossing powders, probably clear and some metallics in your arsenal. We're going to use a Stampers Anonymous and Stamp and Stencil set. This one is THMM 144, and I love these butterflies. And we're going to pair this up with some Distress ink. Now, Distress ink is a dye ink. Remember that it acts quickly, it dries quickly, and it dyes your paper. So we have to do something else to get it that shiny look. I have placed my stamps on my cardstock where I want them to stamp. I have lifted them up with the lid of my stamping platform and prepared my cardstock by using the anti-static brush. Now I'm going to use peacock feathers for my very first butterfly. Ink that up really, really well. and cover that up quickly and go ahead and stamp. Now give it a second to transfer that ink into your card. Give it a good press. This one has a lot of detail, so I didn't want to mess any of that detail up. Now, a little bit ago, I asked you in a poll question on YouTube if you clean your stamps and with what. So this is just some water. And if they're really bad, then I use a water-based stamp cleaner or a stamp cleaner like StazOn for more permanent inks. Now this next one, maybe mustard seed, and ink that up and give it a good firm press. We're going to make this one really bright and colorful. I love this card, and I'm not usually a clean and simple person, but this one comes out beautifully. And this last one, I'm going to ink up with Seedless Preserves. This is a pinky purple kind of color, and it's just beautiful, and I think it pairs really nicely with the blue and the yellow that I selected. For this technique, it's super important that you clean your stamps because you don't want to contaminate your Versamark ink pads. If you do contaminate the pad, just go ahead and wipe off onto a piece of scrap paper, and then you can re-ink your pad. Now I've just loaded up my 3 butterflies with that Versamark and given them a good firm press. And now we're going to finish it off. I'm using Wow Clear Gloss in Super Fine. Now this is a ginormous jar that I just got. Clear is my most used, and since I make so many cards and so many videos, I decided to be cost effective and get the large jar. Now this technique is fabulous because you don't need anything more than your ink and a single clear embossing powder, and you can make any color you want. Our fourth technique is using perfect pearls. Now we're going to color our own embossing powder, and I only have these few metallics, so I'm just taking a little clear plastic like dessert cup from the dollar store, and I'm dumping a little bit of the clear embossing powder in there, and then, oh, I should have tapped that off. This comes out to be a mess. So I'm just using, again, a little Scoopy Doop from Dollar Tree, and just adding a little tiny bit of the perfect pearls. It's going to add shimmer to that clear embossing powder in whatever color you choose. So this is a great way to use yet another supply that you just have lying around in a drawer somewhere. So if the powder's not dark enough, simply add a little more, or add a different color if that's what blows your dress up. Whatever works, but give it a really good firm stir and incorporate all that perfect pearl into that clear embossing powder. I'm bringing my stamp platform back out, and I'm using a Spellbinder stamp. This one is called Elegant Diamond. Did you spot what I forgot? Yep, absolutely positively forgot the anti-static powder brush. But we're going to move ahead with it anyway. I'm using my Versamark, and I'm giving this a really good firm coating to get those super fine lines onto my cardstock the first go around. Using my little dessert cup, I'm going to go ahead and cover my entire panel with our pre-made custom Perfect Pearl embossing powder. Now here's where you can see that I should have used the anti-static powder brush, but I'm going to go ahead and heat set this anyway, and then just wipe off with a towel whatever of the perfect pearl still remains. These 4 fun embossing techniques, which will you try? This mix and match card came out beautifully. Our hand colored and embossed magnolia pairs up beautifully with a dry embossed background. Using dye inks on these butterflies and finished with some clear embossing powder makes a beautiful, clean and simple card. Custom blend perfect pearls and clear embossing powder for a fantastic masculine congratulations card. Let me know in the comments below which technique you're going to try next. But don't go yet, because I've selected some great videos for you. Until next time, I'll see you real soon.